Good evening, everyone. Welcome to a live telephone town hall with your representative in Congress, John Mannion. I'll be serving as moderator for today's telephone town hall, Congressman Mannion, which is also being live streamed on our website at mannion.house.gov. In just a few moments, Congressman Mannion will introduce himself and share some end-of-year updates. After his remarks, we'll open the call up for live questions. If you are a constituent in Central New York or the Mohawk Valley and need assistance with a federal agency, including Medicaid, Social Security, Veterans Benefits, passports, the IRS, please know you can contact a member of our staff at 315-233-4333 or visit our website at mannion.house.gov. Again, that's 315-233-4333 or visit our website at mannion.house.gov. Before I turn things over to Congressman Mannion, I'd like to remind everyone that if you'd like to ask a live question at any point during the call, please press star 3. And if you'd like to subscribe to Congressman Mannion's newsletter to stay up to date on everything he's doing for NY22, please press star 6. Okay, let's get started. Congressman Mannion, I'll turn it over to you to say a few opening remarks.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining tonight's telephone town hall. I'm Representative John Mannion, and I appreciate you taking the time to be part of this conversation. This is my third telephone town hall and my fifth town hall overall since taking office, and I'm grateful to everyone across Central New York and the Mohawk Valley who keep showing up and engaging. Before we get into questions, I want to share a quick update from the House floor. Just a few minutes ago, I joined a strong bipartisan majority in voting for the fiscal year 2026 National Defense Authorization Act, legislation that gives our service members a well-deserved 3.8% raise and strengthens support for military families. Our region plays a key role in keeping our country safe. Our state is home to more than 27,000 active duty service members, many of whom grew up or still live in Central New York and the Mohawk Valley. New York 22 is also home to the 174th Air National Guard, based at Hancock Airport, and many civilians who work to support our military, from those who live here to those that work at DFAS in Rome and work for our defense contractors like Lockheed, SRC, JMA, Saab, Indium, and other countries across the district that develop cutting-edge radar, communications, and aerospace systems. This year's NDAA includes important acquisition reforms and industrial base investments to support the work of our local businesses, ensure our national security, and protect the high-skilled jobs that anchor our economy. It also reaffirms United States support for Ukraine and holds the administration accountable for continued partnership with our democratic allies around the world. I'll also add that the success of Griffiths will continue to be a regional priority for the Mohawk Valley. I'll always stand with our troops, work to strengthen our military, and deliver for the workers and employers who make Central New York and the Mohawk Valley critical to America's security. It's the kind of bipartisan work that I believe Congress should be focused on and that I hope I'll see more of. I also want to say something that I've said before, but that grows more urgent with each passing week. I'm gravely concerned about the actions of the president. We've watched a string of objectionable pardons, including pardons for convicted drug traffickers and political allies, issued without transparency or regard for the rule of law. We've seen concerning military action in the Caribbean, with boats being bombed and destroyed as the president acts as judge, jury, and executioner in an extrajudicial manner. We've seen un-American attacks on hardworking immigrants who are following the rules and showing up to their scheduled appointments only to get sent to deportation centers by masked immigration enforcement officials. We've also seen attempts to fire duly appointed and congressionally confirmed heads of independent agencies and replace them with loyalists, and a push for a Russia-friendly outcome in Ukraine instead of standing shoulder to shoulder with our Democratic allies. And through all of it, the President's enablers and Congress refused to provide even basic oversight. No hearings or accountability, no checks and balances, unlike what we've seen in past Congresses, even in the first Trump administration, and regardless of who's in the majority in the House or the Senate. That's not how our system is supposed to work, and I'll continue to speak out forcefully whenever democratic norms, national security, and the rule of law are being undermined. I held my last telephone town hall during the government shutdown, which ended up being the longest government shutdown in our history. And while Speaker Johnson kept the House out of session for 50 days, refusing to bring members back even as the country suffered, I stayed busy meeting with constituents, touring local businesses and manufacturers, visiting hospitals, and talking with community leaders about workforce development, healthcare, public safety, and veteran services. For nearly 2 months, the House majority refused to negotiate, refused to return to Washington to work on behalf of the people who put us into office, and sat by while the White House weaponized our social safety net for political gain. And the truth is, the government may be open again, but Congress has only passed a short-term funding bill. If we don't negotiate a comprehensive, responsible bipartisan package that protects working families and lowers costs before funding runs out again by the end of January, we'll be right back in the same spot. And while families are struggling with healthcare costs and everyday expenses, the House has spent far too much time on resolutions meant to divide us rather than solve problems. So my focus for the rest of the year and heading into 2026 will continue to be delivering real results for all of you by lowering costs, protecting healthcare, growing jobs, upholding the Constitution and the rule of law, and improving the quality of life in NY22. Tonight, I want to answer your questions, share some of what we've accomplished this year, and talk about how we move into 2026 with a focus on solutions, stability, and affordability. And if you don't get an answer to your questions here tonight, you can call us anytime at 315-233-4333 or visit mannion.house.gov for updates, resources, and for information on ways we can help. And with that, thank you again for being here, and I'll turn it over to our moderator to get us started with our questions.
Thank you so much for those remarks, Congressman. Some of the participants on tonight's call submitted questions in advance. Let's get started with a question from Nate from Baldwinsville. Nate asked, why are you posting about how Republicans are doing everything wrong when you should be looking for bipartisan solutions to key issues like healthcare? I would love to see you join the Problem Solvers Caucus to reach more bipartisan solutions. Congressman, turning it over to you.
Thank you, Nate, for the question, and I agree with you. In fact, I am on a list to join the Problem Solvers Caucus. That's what the people of Central New York and the Mohawk Valley are used to and demand, is that we work together and solve problems that exist in this country. But there is a weight to join there. There needs to be an equal number of Republicans and Democrats that join. But I'm going to tell you that I stand strongly by my bipartisan record, both in the state Senate and here in Congress. The vast majority of the bills that I've co-sponsored or sponsored, 60% of them have bipartisan support. Last week, I co-sponsored a piece of legislation that successfully passed in the House to help with pediatric cancer research. I have a long list of things that we will continue to do in a bipartisan way to work together so that we can find real solutions for people. We just passed the NDAA. That passed with bipartisan support. And I want to remind people that my office is here to help everyone So please engage with our office when you have an issue related to a government agency that they could help out with. But I'm going to continue to tell the truth. Many of the actions of the president should concern everyone. As I mentioned in my remarks at the beginning, we've seen the commuting of sentences and the ending of investigations for individuals that have purchased the president's family's meme coin or stable coin. Actions like that simply are unacceptable, un-American, unlawful, and we must, as a Congress, provide oversight for actions like that. There's actions that have been found through the courts to be unlawful, illegally firing of our government workers or the suspension of collective bargaining agreements. There's many things that, again, regardless of party, members of Congress, to maintain the co-equal branches of government, should be standing up and speaking out, and we should be conducting oversight hearings to make sure that there is accountability and that the president stays within his executive powers. So I'm going to continue to tell the truth, but I'm also going to continue to work with my colleagues to find common ground and improve the lives of the people in NY22 and across this country.
Thank you, Congressman. While we're waiting for more live questions, let's do a quick poll question for our audience. Our first poll question is about tariffs. The question is, are you concerned that tariffs are increasing costs on everyday goods like groceries, clothing, and electronics? I'll repeat that again for everyone. The question is, are you concerned that tariffs are increasing costs on everyday goods like groceries, clothing, and electronics? Please press 1 for very concerned, 2 for somewhat concerned, and 3 for not concerned. I'll repeat that one more time. Are you concerned that tariffs are increasing costs on everyday goods like groceries, clothing, and electronics? Please press 1 for very concerned, 2 for somewhat concerned, and 3 for not concerned. Okay, let's go ahead and start taking live questions. Remember, if you'd like to ask a live question during this call, please press *3. First up, we have Adam from Camillus with a question about the classification of certain graduate programs by the Department of Education. Adam, how about you?
Hi, Senator Mannion. Thanks for taking my question.
Thank you, Adam.
Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you. Thank you, Adam. Yes.
Yeah, I'm a physical therapy educator, and I think many of us experience that there's a lack of healthcare providers really in the country, but in central New York. And the new changes to federal student aid is going to make that harder. At my school, we're the third cheapest school in New York State out of like 30 schools. And the new changes won't cover the cost of our education at our school being so cheap. Is this something you're aware of and that you could help advocate for changing this policy?
I am aware of it, Adam, and I stand with you. You know, I disagree with these changes. In fact, within the Education and Workforce Committee, myself and my colleagues attempted to amend that. I share your concern over that change that was made to impose these strict federal student loan limits on the advanced healthcare degree programs. We need more people to go into healthcare. These are important jobs and good jobs and necessary jobs. We know that even though we have a robust healthcare system here in central New York and the Mohawk Valley, that we're stretched. And I want to make sure that the people that go into these positions, nurses, occupational therapists, social workers, mental health counselors, other essential workers, that everybody has an opportunity to be able to find their passion and meet that goal and have a rewarding career in the field that they choose. And unfortunately, these changes are going to limit that. My work in the state Senate, when it came to our higher ed institutions in the SUNY system, I fought to make sure that tuition costs remain low and that we had grant and loan programs so that people could access, these fields. So for those of you who may not be aware of this issue, a little bit of background. In the big, beautiful bill that passed along party lines earlier this year, it included a provision that has impacted how graduate programs, the federal loan eligibility for some of those programs, and have decreased the limits at which someone can borrow. So, I don't like this policy change. I do believe that we have to reverse it. In fact, I recently joined a letter with many of my colleagues that was sent to the administration to reverse this harmful policy and ensure that there's equal access to these loans for all of our graduate degrees. So I thank you for the question. I also thank you for going into the field, and you could practice in a number of different places. You choose to do that in Central New York, and we need you. I thank you for that. I thank you for the question, and I agree with you, and I stand with you. And we're actively working to reverse that change.
Thank you, Adam, again for the question. Before we go to our next caller, let me remind everyone that if you'd like to ask a live question, please press *3. And if you'd like to sign up for Congressman Mannion's newsletter to get updates on future telephone town halls and other updates from our office, please press *6. Next, we are going to go with Anthony from Baldwinsville with a question about affordability. Anthony, you're now live with the Congressman.
Thank you, John, for making this town hall so accessible.
Thank you, Anthony.
You mentioned affordability a couple times in your speech, and that word is just everywhere. Every politician is talking about making things more affordable. So, what I really want to hear is one of John's original ideas.
Gotcha. Well, I do have a great team around me, and we talk about affordability almost every day. As we saw the president running and campaigning, he talked about lowering costs on day one. Well, listen, I'm no economist, and I know that there are some things that the government can do to make things more affordable, but there's multiple factors worldwide and locally that cause inflation. So I remain focused on addressing this crisis that's certainly hitting working families. I spent some time at a senior center over the government shutdown, and the folks that were there are so dependent because they are on a fixed income. Some of them receive SNAP benefits. Some of them are in the program of LIHEAP to receive home heating assistance. So there's real concerns out there, and I've joined my colleagues to introduce legislation to keep health insurance premiums from spiking. There's been a lot of conversation about the Affordable Care Act subsidies. Many are on those plans, and they're going to spike because those subsidies are going to expire at the first of the year. So not only have we talked about it, we have tried to amend that legislation, and I've co-sponsored pieces of legislation to extend those subsidies. In my conversations with our hospitals and other healthcare providers, not just in the past few weeks or months, but at the beginning of the year, talking about the necessity of extending those tax credits. Certainly, I reject the cuts to Medicaid and Medicare, as the revenue that these healthcare providers need is going to be dramatically cut. We're going to have fewer people off of insurance. So those are real issues that we can do something about. We also know that our utility costs have been going up. So some of the grants to create innovative projects as it relates to energy generation and transmission have been cut. I recently sent a letter to the administration about making sure that upstate New York, with our semiconductor expansion that's happening with Micron, that we be eligible for support from the federal government as it relates to energy generation and transmission to try to keep our utility costs down. I also reject what happened at the state level with the PSC, the Public Service Commission, approval of the utility companies' rates that are going to only make things less affordable as, those prices are going up. So government can play a role and should play a role. In fact, Congress should be playing the role which is enshrined to our branch of government in the Constitution as it relates to trade policy. I spoke with farmers this week. I spoke with them on Monday about their input costs going up, and therefore the costs on the crops that they're growing and being sold into market going up. Also, they have lost some of those markets, as I'm sure we are aware, because the president has taken over trade policy. And I've called him out and said that this is the job of Congress. Imposts and excises are under our purview. And I've signed discharge petitions and legislation to rein in those powers that are already our powers. So, there is a place for tariffs, but trade policy should be strategic and should be well thought out and should not be chaotic. And unfortunately, because of the loss of these markets and the increase of input costs, that's what we're seeing at our grocery stores, and increased costs on food. So we should rein that in, take it back over, have thoughtful trade policy that makes sense, that yes, returns jobs to the United States, but also make sure that there's costs are down. We can do better in the utility space, and we should do better. And I will continue to advocate in that space. And obviously, we want to make sure that our healthcare systems have the support that they need, and that people have accessible and affordable health coverage. And unfortunately, what we're going to see is those numbers spike for all of us, not just people on the ACA, because our private insurance plans are going to make an adjustment. If people have a question about a variety of different programs, whether they be federal or state, I encourage you to contact my office to find out what some of those things are. You could call my Syracuse office at 315-233-4333 or our Utica office at 315-732-0713, as there are programs out there that people may not know about that we want to connect the constituents to.
Thank you, Anthony, again for that question. And just to repeat something that the Congressman said, if you're a constituent in Central New York or the Mohawk Valley and need assistance with a federal agency, Medicaid, Social Security, veterans benefits, you name it, please know you can reach out to a member of our staff at 315-233-4333 or visit our website at mannion.house.gov. And don't forget that you can also sign up for our newsletter by pressing *6. We're going to go back to our live questions now. Our next one comes from Meredith in North Syracuse about impeachment. Meredith, you are now live. Meredith, you with us?
Hello,
Yes,
Meredith.
I
I can hear you. Great.
I'm so glad to talk to you. I have so much respect for you. I've wanted to meet you forever. I believe in everything you believe in. I think you're an excellent man for the government. And my question is, because of the insecurity of our economy, the insecurity of our Medicaid, the older people who need their medication, younger people who need their medication, dealing with a president that we know is physically and mentally unfit, according to doctors, and everyone keeps on blaming it on it's a Republican problem, it's a Democrat problem. I know you are bipartisan, and I don't understand why this felon isn't impeached with all the nasty things he's doing. He's ruining our country, and I really don't understand. What do we need to do to impeach this man?
Well, Meredith, thank you so much for your question and your concern, and I share those concerns. I will remind you, this president has been unsuccessfully impeached twice already in his first presidency. Do I believe that he has committed impeachable acts? I do. Earlier, I referenced his family's creation of a cryptocurrency, a meme coin and a stable coin, and they have benefited greatly, his family, from that. Additionally, if you look at, what has happened and reported in the media, that there have been sentences that have been commuted. People who committed crimes, and what was part of the judgment was that they had to pay restitution. In the president absolving the people of this, they don't even have to pay the restitution to individuals that were harmed, sometimes to the tune of millions of dollars. And presidents have done that in the past and ended investigations in the past. But what is unique and different is not just that these are campaign donors to the president, but these are people that have purchased and used his meme coin and stable coin, and they are often, not only are sentences being commuted, but individuals are provided elevated levels of access to the president. That's un-American, a violation of the Emoluments Clause. So what is it going, first of all, when Democrats take the majority at the midterms and we have the gavel and we control the committees, I do believe that there will be a much greater level of oversight. There will be investigations, and everyone will be afforded their due process. So I do believe that that process will occur. If from those investigations and findings and testimony that evidence suggests that the president should be impeached, then that will be moving through the different committees and the process. But if Congress voted today, and we've already seen an attempt at this, the Republicans are not going to vote for impeachment. They're simply not. And if some of them were convinced that we should move forward with those proceedings, it would then go to the Oversight Committee, and that committee would have to be willing to advance that forward. But I don't think that it would get out of that committee. The Judiciary Committee has already shown that they have no desire to move forward with impeachment proceedings. On top of this, we have a situation where other guardrails that are supposed to prevent actions like we've seen are supposed to be a check against these lawless actions, like the DOJ should be acting independently. They should not be weaponized towards political opponents of the president. Inspector generals, if they were in place, calling out the mismanagement of programs and operations, those things aren't happening. It just does not exist in this Congress. So it is a new type of dynamic here. There certainly are people out there that believe that the president is acting within his powers. I disagree. I disagree as it relates to tariffs, the defiance of the rule of law, the profiting from his position, and a number of other things. So, unfortunately, we don't have bipartisan support to move towards impeachment, and we don't have the gavel. And in this highly polarized climate here in Congress, the Speaker and Representative Jim Jordan, who chairs the committee that I was referencing, are not going to move forward with that. So, again, we need to provide the oversight that we can in the minority. I ask that my Republican colleagues also join us in providing that oversight for the good of the country, to maintain the co-equal branches of government, and to not allow the president to concentrate power as he already has done in these first 11 months of his presidency.
Thank you, Meredith. While we're waiting for our next question, let's go ahead and ask the audience another quick poll question. Our second poll question for tonight is, do you believe there should be a ban on stock trading for members of Congress? Please press 1 for yes, 2 for no, and 3 for unsure. I'll repeat that one more time. The question is, do you believe there should be a ban on stock trading for members of Congress? Please press 1 for yes, 2 for no, and 3 for unsure. And thank you all for participating in that poll question. We're going to go back to our live questions now and move to a question from Alice and Marietta about Venezuela.
Will Congress be able to stop the possible invasion of Venezuela? Because it looks like that's where we're headed.
That's a great question, Alice, and I share your concern. You know that the power to declare war falls within Congress's purview. That's why I call upon my Republican colleagues and my Democratic colleagues to demand and use our constitutionally given authority as it relates to that. What we've seen in these boat strikes that have happened off the coast of Venezuela and other places, members of Congress are upset, and that is where we do have bipartisan support. The American people deserve to know why we're doing this and what is happening, and members of Congress deserve that also, but that is not what we're seeing. So, this is of great concern to me. I know that our Coast Guard engages with boats that may be trafficking drugs. And of course, I stand with our military. We have to make sure that our national security is held at a premium. We don't want illegal drugs coming into our country, but we have ways to be able to do that. And to have the president act as judge, jury, and executioner is just wrong. When the Coast Guard engages with these boats that they believe to be trafficking drugs, 25% of the time, these are the Coast Guard's numbers, those boats are not carrying drugs and are not drug trafficking individuals there. So we really do need action, bipartisan action by the Senate and the House to assert authority and oversight, and there have been war powers resolutions, which I've supported, introduced in both chambers. So it's my hope that we can take these resolutions up and put a check on the executive branch to make sure that Congress plays its constitutional role. But I'm worried as we're running out of time here in the House as we approach the end of the year that the Speaker is not going to make that a priority. Our actions as a country really do make us look bad. And additionally, it puts our troops in harm's way. We are provocative as we are striking these boats. And, just in the past few hours, securing an oil tanker. These are the kind of actions some would call unlawful, and that is for investigation, and that's why we need the transparency to see if these actions are unlawful. But beyond that, they're dangerous actions, and I know that the American people, the people of NY22, do not want to go to war with Venezuela. And if we look back, there was not a lot of conversation out there about why we need military action towards Venezuela prior to this administration. So the American people demand transparency, and they want their elected officials in Congress to do their constitutional duties. That's oversight and the authority to engage in war actions. I stand by what I know is the will of the people, and I commend my colleagues on both sides of the aisle for taking this bipartisan action to advance these war power resolutions in both chambers of Congress. And I hope that we can prevent any further military action.
Thank you, Alice. As a reminder to everyone, if you'd like to ask a live question, please press *3. And if you'd like to sign up for Congressman Mannion's newsletter, please press *6. Let's take another live question now. We're going to go to Alicia in Liverpool, who has two questions, one about the administration's policies, and the second related to wealth inequality, and the second about election security. Alicia,
Hi.
you are now live with the Congressman.
Hi, and thank you for doing this because we, the people, need it. It's so much going on. My question is, will the administration be held accountable for taking from the poor to give to the rich? That's the first question. And will our election, the next presidential election, will it be secure?
Alicia, thank you for the questions. I really appreciate it and appreciate your kind words. On your first question, the bill that passed, the reconciliation bill, is a huge giveaway that only increases the wealth disparity in this country and drives up the debt, as you know, and that's why I opposed it. We need to make sure that the hardworking people of this country that have paid into our system, Social Security, Medicare, that we support them, that we support our veterans, that we support our active military. And unfortunately, as the president has promised to bring prices down, we haven't seen any action in that regard. So for me, I just want to make sure that the people that have benefited from the systems that exist in this country, the wealthiest that have benefited from those, simply pay their fair share. And when I listen to the president talk about people who are, benefiting from these social systems and driving up the cost, let's be clear. This is a government by the billionaires, of the billionaires, and for the billionaires. And they are the ones that are benefiting as this administration is in. So I want to make an adjustment certainly in that area. That's why I'm fighting for an extension of these healthcare subsidies and making sure that we do whatever we can to keep things affordable, to make sure that we have a robust Medicare system that people love, that is working, and additionally that we preserve Social Security, enhance it. On your question about election security, what's very frustrating for me is to watch what has been stated in the past about our elections not being valid. I've won close elections and I've lost them. I've been a part of hand recounts, absentee recounts, and I've watched the process work. And I remind people that we have in our boards of elections, Democrats and Republicans, an equal number of staff. Our elections are triple checked. And to hear the words of the president repeatedly for a long period of time about how our elections are invalid is very troubling to me, because that's really a pillar of our democracy. And to sow doubt in it really does all of us a disservice. But as we approach the midterms, I stand with you, and so do my colleagues and many other good government pro-democracy groups, with concern that the president is going to try to sow doubt in people's minds about the validity of the elections, and also use the National Guard as an intimidating force in areas around this country. So, the president does not have a great record of accepting the results of an election. So I do share your concerns, and what we've seen around this country and here locally is that people do not find the president's actions popular, and they have taken it out by using their voice and their vote in local elections. That may continue, but I know that people love their democracy. That's why they're coming out to vote, and vote the way that they are. And back to what you'd said before regarding taking from the poor and giving to the rich. We have the very wealthy in this country are benefiting from that bill that went through. what we saw, how did that happen? $800 billion in cuts to Medicaid and nearly $2 billion in cuts to food assistance. So when you say that, taking words from Robin Hood, you are 100% right. That is exactly what happened to pay for tax cuts for millionaires and billionaires. So I'm going to continue to stand with the working people, and I know that they stand with me, and I appreciate all that they do for me. I thank you for the question, and we're going to work to make sure that wealth inequity is addressed. And we can address it in a number of different ways, but certainly having a bill cut food assistance and cut health coverage to give away to the wealthiest is just not what the people were looking for. They were looking for the cost of items to come down, and I do believe that that's why the president got the level of support he did in the election, but we're not doing anything to lower those costs. Thank you for the questions, Alicia.
All right. Thank you, Alicia. Our next question comes from Susan in Lebanon. It is about ICE activity in the district. Susan, you're now live with the Congressman.
Hello. I'm glad to be able to talk to you, Congressman. I've been despairing of the actions of our government sending armed thugs to go after citizens and non-citizens on the basis of their apparent ethnicity. And I've also been reading about mass nonviolent resistance, and I think at a time when the Democrats are unable to be legislatively effective as we hope to be in another year, it's important for elected officials as well as other citizens to come out and support our neighbors, like the owner of the Chinese restaurant in Camden, who was taken away, the many other people who are living with fear that they're going to be detained and removed from our country regardless of whether they actually have done anything wrong. I would like to ask of you to tell us how you personally have been out leading this nonviolent resistance to the actions of ICE and the Border Patrol, as some of the other members of Congress have been visible on social media and present at protests at detention facilities. How have you been able to work as an individual to help the people from our congressional district who have been detained?
Yeah, Susan, thank you so much for the question, and I share certainly your concern. So my office every day has successfully worked with individuals to navigate the immigration system regardless of their status and support their due process rights. These are kids, their parents, workers, asylum seekers. We're here to help. And we know that we have a variety of different statuses of people with immigration, green cards, temporary protected status. And Central New York and the Mohawk Valley have a long history of welcoming new Americans, asylum seekers, refugees, and we support the immigrant community here. These folks are an integral part of our community, and we support them as our neighbors, our colleagues, our friends. Individuals who are here legally and show up to their immigration hearings, and ICE is there masked to separate them from their families and then leverage that separation to force them into deportation or send them to a detention center is not how we should be treating people in Central New York and the Mohawk Valley. I encourage anyone, before they have an immigration issue or afterwards, to contact my office, because I have a tremendous team who works every day on these cases and successfully has worked through many of them. So in addition to the work on my casework team that they do to help individuals who reach out to our office, I've recently introduced legislation with some of my colleagues that would protect individuals who are physically present at a federal immigration facility to participate in a hearing or attend an appointment so that they would not be detained or deported. If an immigrant is here and working and paying taxes and following the rules, showing up to their hearings and court appearances, they should not be in fear of deportation. So the way this administration has talked about how they would enforce immigration policies to the American people was to target only the most dangerous criminals, the worst of the worst, who were here unlawfully. And I know from being in the state Senate, from living in this community for a very long time, that these actions are incredibly unpopular, that people are very upset when they see their friends, their neighbors, the people who their kids go to school with, at the soccer game, at the grocery store, be treated in this manner, because we have a dysfunctional immigration system that needs comprehensive immigration reform. And we know that there are individuals here in this country that are undocumented or have overstayed their visa, but they're often a critical part of our communities, our workforce, and we need to work with them to find a pathway towards citizenship where we have comprehensive immigration reform. And I'm going to stand by that. You know, unfortunately, this issue has been weaponized and politicized for a very long time. And now, with this harsh enforcement, often unlawful enforcement, that we're forgetting, you know, the role that has been played by the federal government in having people in this country that may be of an illegal status. We should be working to figure that out rather than these harsh policies. So, you know, I agree that there are people out there that are here illegally and have committed crimes. You know, of course, we need to enforce the laws and not have those people in our communities. But we don't have bipartisan immigration reform. We need it. We also need to draw a line when there is an unlawful act. So I share your concerns that I've heard from many people over these current policies that are very unpopular, and I'm going to continue to speak up and stand up against that. Certainly, the masking of ICE officials and the profiling of individuals should not be happening in this country. It's not true to the values that we are supposed to have, and I'll continue to speak up on that. So if you or someone you know, anyone out there, needs assistance with an immigration issue, I have a tremendous staff that works on these issues every day, and I ask that you please reach out to my office at 315-233-4333 or 315-732-0713, and you can also go to my website at mannion.house.gov. Thank you, Susan, for the question. And again, this community has not only welcomed refugees and asylum seekers to Central New York and the Mohawk Valley, we have built systems around welcoming those people to this community and helping them achieve their own American dream. So to see what we're seeing is such the antithesis of how we behave here in Central New York and the Mohawk Valley and what this country is supposed to be.
All right, our next question comes from Robert in Syracuse about Social Security benefits and cost of living. Robert, you're now live with the Congressman.
Yeah, hi, Congressman. You know, my Social Security check goes up barely every year, yet my Medicare just went up from $185 to $210. My Advantage premium just went up by $47 a month. I don't even get $20 increase on Social Security, so that puts me behind. And yet, I just got my National Grid bill, and that's like 16% more than it was last year. I used a little more energy than I did last year, but it's up a lot over that. Yet the president's taking all these gold bribes and everything, and cups and everything, What is anyone doing about any of this stuff? You know, these people are grifting off of everything under the sun, and we're barely making ends meet.
Thank you so much, Robert, for the question. I stand with you and I agree with you. And that's why I've been very vocal about the president's actions and the lack of emphasis on actually attacking the affordability crisis. Protecting and strengthening Social Security will always be one of my highest priorities in Congress, and I'll oppose any attempts to cut back or privatize the Social Security Administration services, or an attempt to disrupt or reduce Social Security payments. And people have genuine concerns about that. Americans have earned their Social Security, and I reject any attempts to raise the retirement age or, allow any unlawful access to financial data, and I've signed on to legislation for that. I know that there was recently a cost of living adjustment to Social Security, but it simply is not enough. And you have paid into the system like we all have, and we should benefit from that system. So I've joined my colleagues in efforts to protect Social Security and ensure the future of this critical program for generations to come. And there's legislation that will enhance it and make it sustainable that's out there. I believe that we should change the way that Social Security calculates its cost of living adjustments to better reflect the price changes in everyday items that seniors would purchase, including prescription drugs and, like you said, healthcare and utility costs. There are utility programs out there for seniors, and I encourage people to contact my office if you're not aware of those state and federal programs that can be helpful. I also support lifting the current taxable income cap so that the wealthiest continue to pay into Social Security above a number that is around 160 or 170,000. We all pay 6.2% into Social Security up until that number. But then the wealthiest that make millions or billions a year, they're only paying not 6.2%, but 0.00 whatever percent because of that cap. And we need to change that to improve the solvency of the program and ensure a fairer system. And like I said before, I will continue to push back on the PSC, and they're allowing for the rate increases. There's other issues in affordability. The tariffs need to end, et cetera. So I share your concerns, Robert. And again, people should not have to be making decisions about whether to afford food, their pharmaceuticals, their rent, or their health coverage. And Social Security is there as a way to make sure that people can live out their golden years with dignity, and I support making changes to it to make sure that that happens. So I thank you for your question. We're going to keep fighting for the common person and make sure that millionaires and billionaires go back to paying their fair share.
Thank you, Robert. We have time now for one final question from the audience before we need to wrap things up. And that question comes from Bob and Marcellus regarding research funding. Bob, you're now live with the Congressman.
Thank you, John. John, my question goes to the fact that a number of people and I are concerned with how funding for biomedical and clinical research at the various universities has been cut back. And my question is, what are you and your colleagues on both sides of the aisle doing to help secure NIH funding for this biomedical and clinical research at the universities?
Well, I do. Thank you, Bob, for the question, and I do agree with you. Dare I say, what has made this country what it is our investment in research and innovation, and we do things a certain way. We use our medical institutions and our higher ed institutions, and we support them with government funding, with NIH grants, so that we can get those top-end researchers. And you look at what has happened in this country as far as the great advancements we've made in medicine, in energy, locally, at Upstate Medical Center, if we did not have those top researchers, we wouldn't have been the hospital that developed the saliva test for COVID that was used around the world that tested the vaccine. So we have these top researchers, a previous Congress and a Republican majority appropriated dollars in these NIH grants. And as a result of that, our higher ed institutions, doesn't matter if it's a district represented by a Republican or a Democrat, these institutions are the ones doing the cutting edge research and improving people's lives. To have those grants cut after the dollars were already supposed to be obligated to them is just not only unfair, it took people out of clinical trials. I mean, this is what makes our country the country that it is. I was a biology and a chemistry teacher for a long time, so I understand the importance of research and innovation. You know, I support the increases in funding to NIH. I have demanded that those frozen grants be restored. Some have. But, you know, our appropriations process is bipartisan in nature, and there was great agreement between Republicans and Democrats that we would fund our research institutions with these NIH grants. So that bipartisan support, I know, is still out there. I know that the Senate passed a bill to include an increase in NIH funding. So there are Republicans and Democrats who support agencies like the National Science Foundation because they understand that how we are going to win that battle, that competition that's out there, is to make sure that we're the ones doing the research in this country. I have legislation to incentivize more research into rare diseases, rare pediatric diseases. I supported that, co-sponsored it, and it passed the House this week. So we can find common ground around American ingenuity and innovation. I was a biology teacher. I happened to work at a great institution, the College of Environmental Science and Forestry, volunteered there, took classes there to help save the American chestnut tree. If we don't support our higher ed institutions in that research, we're not going to get to where we need to. And you look at the list of Nobel Prize winners in chemistry, in physics, in biology, in medicine, and you see the American flag next to a lot of names. That's because of our investment, and I'm going to continue to work to make sure that our research institutions have what they need to improve people's lives and make this country a fantastic country and advance us on the world stage. So I appreciate that. I do believe we're coming at the end of time here. I want to wish everyone a great holiday season, a happy Hanukkah, a Merry Christmas, a happy Kwanzaa. I hope everyone has a great holiday. I know winter has started here a little bit early. It's cold. It's snowy. We are resilient people. We're hardy people. We lift each other up and we work together. And I wish everyone a fantastic holiday season. If you need help, I encourage everybody again to call my Syracuse office at 315-233-4333 or my Utica office at 315-732-0713 or go to my website, mannion.house.gov. I have a great staff. They're here to help. Thank you, everybody, for joining tonight. Have a great night and happy holidays.